President Biden, meanwhile, calling for higher tariffs on Chinese steel and aluminum while speaking to the United Steelworkers headquarters in Pittsburgh yesterday. Biden plans on asking the U.S. trade representative to increase the tariff rate from over 7% to 25%. Here's what he said. Watch.
American steelworkers can outcompete as long as they have fair competition. But for too long, the Chinese government has poured state money into Chinese steel companies, pushing them to make so much steel as much as possible, subsidized by the Chinese government. Because Chinese steel companies produce a lot more steel than China needs, it ends up dumping extra steel into the global markets at unfairly low prices. They're not competing, they're cheating. I made sure that we have the most advanced technologies that we've developed and invented, and they can't be sent to China or because it'll undermine our national security. For all this tough talk on China, it never occurred to my predecessor to do any of that.
Oh, boy. Joining me now is Gatestone Institute senior fellow and author of The Coming Collapse of China and China is Going to War, Gordon Chang. Gordon, great to see you. Don't you wish every year was an election year? Then we could actually see a president take action. President Biden. I mean, look, he's been in Washington 40 years. He hasn't said anything about any of these steel tariffs, even as President Trump was ramping up sanctions and tariffs against China. But here we are in an election year, and he's talking to the unions, and he's got to get that vote, Gordon.
Yes, well, you know, Biden has been president for more than 3 years, and this issue does not seem to have bothered him until right now, where he's losing the rank and file. You know, President Trump, as soon as he took office in 2017, started laying the regulatory groundwork for his Section 301 tariffs, which he imposed in the first quarter of 2018. That was lightning speed by Washington standards. And by the way, you know, in February, President Trump told you in your interview that he wanted to impose tariffs greater than 60%, to take those Section 301 tariffs and increase them. There's only one person in this election who really wants to get tariffs and to protect the American worker, and that's President Trump.
Yeah, and when President Trump first did it, he was panned by all the globalists out there who were worried about a trade war. You're right. I spoke with President Trump in February about all of this, and here's what he said. It's amazing to me that Joe Biden can just talk and talk and talk about something and say that his predecessor never did it when this was part of President Trump's key agenda. Here's President Trump in February with me. Your critics are saying that you're going to start another trade war with China.
It's not a trade war. I did great with China with everything. Look, China came in, they were going to destroy our steel industry, and I put tariffs, big tariffs, 50% to 100%, but 50% for the most part. It stopped it. I have steel people that every time they see me, they start to cry. They hug me. They said, you saved our industry, but now we're letting it go.
Now the Washington Post is saying that you're talking about 60% tariffs on Chinese goods. Is that in the cards?
No, I would say maybe it's going to be more than that, because we're going to have, look, I want China to do great. I do. And I like President Xi a lot. He was a very good friend of mine during my term.
A House Select Committee on China investigation finds that Beijing, meanwhile, has been fueling the U.S. fentanyl crisis by subsidizing the production and export of precursor chemicals used to make the deadly drug, Gordon. It's happening despite President Biden and Chinese President Xi Jinping's deal to curb the flow of fentanyl precursors. That deal, of course, was supposed to have been made during their meeting when they took a walk on the park in San Francisco last year, Gordon. You've got Joe Biden trying to act tough now, as if he's tough on China, but we've seen the evidence that he is, in fact, anything but tough on communist China.
Yes, look, Xi Jinping is a mass murderer. He is trying to kill Americans with fentanyl. But I am more angry at our political establishment, especially Joe Biden, because Biden knows that the Chinese are doing this. Remember, Xi Jinping made that essentially same promise to Presidents Obama and Trump, and he violated both of them. You know, you look at Joe Biden, he's opened the border, which means the Chinese fentanyl is coming across. He's imposed no costs on China for fentanyl. This is being permitted by Biden. And, you know, the American people ought to be outraged. This is the one issue that should drive the American people to the polls on November 5 and say, we are no longer going to allow the Chinese to kill Americans, because this is just being permitted by the current president of the United States.
Yeah, and all of this, and in the face of this bad behavior from Communist China, what is America doing? We keep sending cabinet officials there to meet with their counterparts. Janet Yellen just back, Anthony Blinken, trying to get the communication going between the U.S. and China. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin speaking to China's defense minister on Tuesday, claiming to reestablish top-level military communications between the countries for the first time since 2022. This was Austin's first time speaking to the Chinese defense minister, who took over the role back in December, Gordon. We have no evidence that we're actually seeing real communications between the two militaries, but this is apparently why the Biden administration keeps sending cabinet members there, begging for some kind of a rapport.
Yes, and the Chinese, they look at this and they treat the United States as vassals because we go to Beijing. And by the way, the defense minister, Admiral Dong Jun, is not really a top Chinese military official. Lloyd Austin's counterpart in the Chinese system is actually Xi Jinping in his role as chairman of the Communist Party's Central Military Commission. China always had our senior officials talk to mid-level Chinese officials because they believe that that is a way that they can demonstrate that they are in a superior position. We need to stop this. If Lloyd Austin wants to talk about military matters with China, he should insist on talking to Xi Jinping, not a mid-level official like Admiral Dong Jun.
Well, I mean, let's face it. The Treasury Secretary of the United States goes to China to meet with her counterpart, and they feed her mushrooms, psychedelic mushrooms. She comes back from the trip and laughs about it. Can you imagine if the U.S. did the same to their Treasury Secretary while in New York or in Washington?
Yes, and as we have seen, and as you're showing right now, you have Janet Yellen bowing to a guy who is actually lower in the Chinese political system than she is in ours. We're feeding an already inflated sense of self-importance of Chinese officials. And, you know, talking sounds responsible, but it has produced horrible results over the course, especially of the last 3 decades. And what we really need to right now is stop talking to China. Let them come to Washington if they want to talk to us. Let them worry about what we think. This is just producing really bad results on what the administration is doing.
Well, I'm sorry, but I mean, just the fact that Janet Yellen decided to go to a bar in Beijing with the ambassador to China and throw down a few beers, just that in and of itself, and then they have video of it. I mean, that in and of itself tells you that she does not understand the threat of Communist China. This is a very serious situation where China is trying to overtake the United States as the #1 superpower. Every day they are doing more and more things to kill American citizens, either through surveillance, either through fentanyl, either through surveillance balloons. And Gordon, here she is in a bar in Beijing in April, having a beer.
Yeah, look, we are understanding that China not only wants to be #1 in the world, they want to rule the world, not just dominate. They want to rule the world. Xi Jinping has been pressing this imperial era notion where he says that the mandate of heaven compels China to rule the world. And since 2017, Chinese officials have been talking about the moon and Mars as part of the People's Republic of China. This is a regime that believes the United States is an existential threat. This is a regime that believes there's only going to be one survivor. It's either going to be the United States of America or the People's Republic of China, not both. We need to start to understand that, or we're going to lose our country. We're far stronger than China, but we can lose our country because we're not protecting ourselves, because we got a president who just doesn't seem to care, who thinks, oh, fentanyl deaths, 70,000 a year, no big deal.
How do you think Europe views Communist China, Gordon? I mean, I've seen the hard stance that Giorgia Meloni has taken in Italy. What about the rest of the Eurozone?
Well, you know, you have people who have been trying to get along with China, like Viktor Orban in Hungary, but you also have others throughout the European Union who have just given up on this. But, you know, what they're really looking to is leadership from the United States.
Right, that's correct.
If the United States is going to have an appropriate response, they will. If we won't, they will try to cut a deal with China.
All right, Gordon, great to get your insights on all of that. Thank you, sir. Gordon Chang joining us this morning on Communist China.